All right, what's going on, guys? It's Fast Cars, Fast Money, just me, but we finally have all three series in NASCAR back on track. Feels like it's literally been a month since the Truck Series has raced, and they'll finally be back on track. But the cool thing for this weekend is every single slate is going to set the final, championship for Phoenix. So at the end of the truck race, Xfinity race, and Cup race, we will know who those final four drivers are for each slate. So, from a fan perspective, I think it's a really fun weekend. From a DFS standpoint, there's a lot of strategy that goes into Martinsville, just with how many laps there are, how many points are up for grabs. So, it's kind of a make or break weekend. DFS is just as far as like nailing the dominators and trying to get off the guys who are probably going to wreck. But that's what makes it fun. And that's why hopefully you're here and have been here throughout the year listening to us and kind of our thoughts. But if for whatever reason, if you're new here or if you haven't already, if you're a frequent visitor of this channel, we only got a couple more weeks left and then it's going to be the off season. So, dropping a like on the video, hitting subscribe, any comments, questions you guys have, drop them down in the comments below. And we will get back to you. But enough of that. Let's just talk about the truck series at Martinsville. So this race is 200 laps, significantly shorter than the Cup Series race, which is 500 laps, but 200 laps is still a lot of points. If you're not familiar, Martinsville is a short half mile, flat track. It takes them 20 seconds, 20, 21 seconds to get around the track. And every 20 seconds, points are being awarded for whoever's running the fast lap and whoever is getting those laps led. But normally the fast laps are kind of distributed just depending on who's in traffic and who isn't. But the laps led is really where you're going to be racking up a lot of the points. So really want to try to nail those lap leaders. It is a trucks series, so we know at some point it's probably going to turn into a wreck fest. And with how short this track is, there's going to be a lot of beat and bang and a lot of people getting turned, a lot of playoff scenarios. It's going to be crazy. So like I said, from a fan standpoint, love this weekend. From a DFS standpoint, sometimes it could be really frustrating because of that. But let's talk about the drivers that we like. So DraftKings really priced up place differential in the truck series race. And I think they did that for a couple of reasons. One, this race isn't as long, so there aren't as many dominator points. And two, you got to remember the last time the truck series race was at Talladega, a super speedway race, where again, of course, it was a wreck fest. A lot of good plays got wrecked out, and they are starting further back than they normally would. So there's more of an emphasis on place differential this weekend. But I still wouldn't go an all place differential line. You definitely will need lap leaders. Just depends on how many do you feel comfortable putting in your line. And if you're not putting as many in your line, are you confident in those guys who you are that can get out front? So looking at the top price range here, I think Kligerman is probably my favorite place differential play of the expensive ones. So of Kligerman, Berry, and Sauter, I'd probably rate them in that order. You can kind of see the interest level there. I just think Kligerman starts the furthest back, and his upside is pretty similar to everyone else priced around him. Yes, Josh Berry did win an Xfinity Series race at this track, but he was in top tier equipment. For the Truck Series race, he's in the Rackley War 25 truck, which is okay, but very similar to him in the Xfinity Series race in the Jordan Anderson 31 car. Like, it's not that 5-star. It's not that top tier equipment. He won't have the ability to win this race, at least from my understanding. I don't expect him to fight for anything more than like a top 10. That's probably the same with Kligerman. The nice thing with Kligerman is he's only $200 more and he gives you 5 additional spots. Sauter, maybe he finishes in the teens, and I just hate paying all the way up for that kind of place differential when I think there's some other good place differential plays lower on the slate. I think John Hunter, Nemechek, and Childer Creed are probably my 2 favorite dominator plays. So you could either just play one of them, you could play both of them. I think it makes sense to get one of those guys in your lines and then pairing them with some of those place differential plays. So I think starting with one of those guys and then maybe pairing him with a Kligerman or some other guys we have some high interest on is a good way to start your line. Ankram's interesting. He's another maybe place differential play, but again, of the place differential plays there, he starts the furthest forward, limiting his PD upside, and his finishing potential is literally not that much higher than Kligerman, Berries, or Sauter. So for me, if you are going to pay all the way up for one, just get the best one and Kligerman and move on from there. Have a lot of interest in Infinger in the 9K range. He is kind of a place differential play. Like, he should be able to move forward, fight for a top 5, most likely. He does have dominator upside. It is a playoff race, but he isn't in the playoffs because he's not a full-time driver, which is crazy to me. He'll be one next year. So he's really only going for the win. He doesn't really care about points racing. He doesn't really care about anything else. He's literally just there for the checkered flag. So I think that gives him a nice advantage. Zane Smith is pretty much in a must-win scenario. So I can see him and his crew chief potentially trying to get off sequence, doing something crazy, and that could really help him or it could really hurt him. And he potentially might be racing a little bit more aggressively than he normally would to try and win. So he just might get caught up in the trouble. Same thing with Chandler Smith. Like, both the Smiths right there, like, they're pretty much in must-win scenarios points-wise. They're just too far out from that cut line to really advance on a points day, unless the other drivers around the cut line have issues very early into the race. Then potentially they could advance, but that's unlikely. Gilliland, I think, is a good contrarian lap leader. So if you're fading John Hunter Nemechek for whatever reason, like we saw at Richmond, I think he started on the pole and his ownership was like 60, 70%. It was really high. Everyone thought he was going to be the lap leader, and their team, whiffed on the setup. They missed it, and that happens. So if that happens again, who's in the best situation to take advantage of that? Well, I'd argue it's the guy who's starting right next to him, which was Todd Gilliland. And we've seen Gilliland run well at these short flat tracks and just have a solid year altogether. So he might be lower owned starting second. People might be scared about that. But if you're building multiple lines, I would have exposure to Gilliland. 8K range. I like a lot of the 8K range. It depends. Do you want a place differential guy or do you want another potential lap leader? If you want some place differential guys, I think Taylor Gray, Corey Heim are, the go-to guys. Taylor Gray seems a little expensive for a guy who doesn't have a ton of experience in a DGM truck. I don't necessarily love Corey Heim that much more than Taylor Gray, but the equipment, I'd argue, it's the KBM 51 truck. It's the same equipment that John Hunter Nemechek's in. So I think the equipment alone gives the edge to Corey Heim, but unless it's Kyle Busch in that truck, you never really feel confident than these other drivers. But these are good, cheap place differential plays to save you some salary from some of those more expensive ones. Or if you don't want to place differential play, you can go with a potential dominator, potential lap leader. That would be, a Matt Crafton, a Stuart Friesen, a Ben Rhodes. Of the three of them there, I feel the most confident that Rhodes, who has the track position and arguably is I guess he's in the same equipment as Crafton, but I would argue that of those three drivers there, we've seen Rhodes out front more often than the other two. Again, if you're building multiple lines, I think you need exposure to all three of those guys, not necessarily in the same lineup, maybe sprinkle one of them in here and there. If you're going for a potential, second tier lap leader who potentially might be lower owned. Austin Hill at $7,800 just seems like a slam dunk value play. Even if he doesn't lead you laps, just the value that you're getting for Austin Hill starting 10th at $7,800 seems like a really good decision to us. Hocevar he's pretty much in a must-win scenario too. He can't advance on points. He doesn't care about points. So he's only going to do, him and his crew chief are only going to do what's best for him to move him track position moving forward, to be there at the end. I could see him racing really aggressively at the end to try to lock himself into Phoenix. So he's probably a boomer bust play. Jack Wood, I think, is a great place differential, safe play to pair with those dominators, depending on who you want to go with. He's a GMS truck who starts deep in the field. If he has problems, it's not really going to hurt your line. Whereas if you play, Stuart Friesen, I know he's in a different price range, but if you play Stuart Friesen and he gets into trouble starting 7th, that's really going to hurt your line. So I think Jack Wood's a good cash, option. Sage Karam, has never raced at Martinsville before, and he's going to hop in the Jordan Anderson 3 truck, which isn't great. So I don't like that. Spencer Davis is okay. He starts so far back in the field that if you end up landing here when you're done, like if he's your 6th driver, you're trying to figure out like, who do I plug in last? I don't hate it. Tanner Gray usually seems to run well. He gets caught up in accidents and wrecks, but starting 27th, I think you should still have exposure to him if you're building multiple lines. Same thing with Kraus. Like Kraus is probably more of a GPP option. Seems to be getting caught up in wrecks this year a lot as well, but it's hard to predict that. But we are going to Martinsville, and we do expect it to be pretty chaotic. If it is chaotic, I think a driver like Haley Deegan could take advantage of that and move forward. But other than that, I don't really expect too much out of her. She should probably run in the, low teens, high 20s, or I guess low 20s, high teens, if that makes sense. I do like Colby Howard. He'll be in this truck next year. And we've seen when Grant Enfinger's in this truck, he usually gets some pretty good, results out of it. I don't think Colby is anywhere near the level of driver that Enfinger is, but still starting 29th, I think he's a place differential play that you should consider. I also like Chris Hacker. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He's a younger guy, but he's in a Nice Motorsports equipment. It's the same equipment that Carson Hocevar has, who's a playoff driver, starts deep in the field, can't lose you any points, just needs to stay on track, and has the potential for a top 25 day finish. Brett Holmes starts a little bit too far forward for me. Timmy Hill, he's okay. I think he'll probably ride around, around where he starts for most of the day. And I can see him at the end with, 50 laps to go, at the end with a late race caution, maybe get back on the lead lap, get a better finish, get a better result than really what his truck is capable of. But regardless, I still think that truck has top 20 speed. And then once you get down to the punt plays, there's not really too many of them down here I like. Purdy starts too high. Austin Wayne Self, probably more of a GPP punt play. I don't know if people will be on him, but value-wise, I think he's a good guy who can give you a good finishing potential. My favorite punt would be Dawson Cram this weekend for a couple of reasons. One, we've seen that Cram and his team have these shorter flat tracks circled. These are the tracks that they put the most effort in. They have the most sponsorship for. They bring their best equipment. They probably don't have a lot of it, but what they do have, they bring it all to these short flat tracks. And he starts in the 30s. So even if he doesn't work out, if he only moves forward a couple of spots, it's not hurting your line. Whereas if you plug in literally any of these drivers at $4,900 below, any of those guys are going to move backwards and probably lose you points. Whereas Cram at least has upside and his floor is relatively low. So yeah, I'll be watching the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series, both race on Saturday. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes the Truck Series on Friday, but it's going to be a Saturday race. But yeah, that'll do it for the Truck Series. If you guys want access to this, it's on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM. We'll probably be tweaking the spreadsheet a little bit. I'm recording this Thursday evening. So, thoughts could potentially change a little bit once we hear some more information and potentially once they go through inspection. But as far as right now, this is kind of the way I'm leading, get 1 or 2, maybe even 3 lap leaders in there, and then just shove in some place differential and value plays. Nothing too crazy different from what we've been telling you guys all year long. You should kind of know, who the good trucks are, who the bad trucks are at this point. But yeah, thank you for watching, and we will see you on the Xfinity and the Cup video.